Hi, I'm Shane. This is Final Girl Reviews, and today I'm ready to talk about Beetlejuice. I'm sorry this review is so late. I just had a lot on my plate, and I really wanted to take the time to really think it through and not just give a review based on how excited I was about this. I really wanted to give a thorough and honest and genuine review of what I thought about Beetlejuice or Beetlejuice 2, because I didn't want to just come in all hyped up, all excited out of the movie theater. I really wanted to give it time and think it through and really figure out how I felt about it. So this is how I feel. Now, as we all know, the original Beetlejuice movie, released in 1988, which was 36 years ago, was a massive hit. It has a huge cult following. I'm a fan. Everybody's a fan. And I know that the hype train for this movie was huge. Now, one of my biggest concerns about Beetlejuice 2 was that it was going to be some kind of nostalgia pandering just to get all of us to put our butts in the seats and pay for tickets that are overpriced just so that Tim Burton can make a buck. And while I do feel I have fair criticisms of the movie, I will say that I did not feel that way at all. I actually think the nostalgia factor of this movie was pretty spot on. There was enough for us to really feel comfortable and cozy in this world that has been created, and it wasn't too on the nose, over the top. A lot of it felt fresh and new, without losing that cozy feeling. Now, for the basic overview of the storyline, it's basically that Charles Dietz, who I'll talk about in a second, dies, and in the aftermath of that, his granddaughter, Lydia's daughter Astrid, is tricked into switching her lifespan with a boy that is already dead. And of course, that means they need to call in the help of Beetlejuice. I totally understand why they didn't want to just do away with Jeffrey Jones's character. It's an important part of the puzzle for Delia and for Lydia and for Astrid, and it really starts the movie. It really gets it going. So I understand why they didn't just do away with him altogether, even though it probably would have been better. But I will say that the way that he dies is pretty fitting for the kind of person that Jeffrey Jones is. And if you don't know anything about Jeffrey Jones, go ahead and Google it, or don't. It's ugly. Michael Keaton returning as Beetlejuice was everything I expected. He had all the mannerisms, the way of speaking, the makeup, everything really fit right back into where it started. I think it's really impressive that he was able to channel that character again, and I thought he was really funny and he made it really interesting, and I was impressed. Willem Dafoe was also a really interesting character as Wolf Jackson. I thought he was funny, it was campy, it was silly. Do I really think it added a lot to the story? But I love Willem Dafoe, so I'm not going to complain. Justin Theroux as Rory was infuriating. He was so annoying and frustrating, and he played the part very well. Now, Arthur Conti as Jeremy was really believable. He was initially a really likable character. I know that a lot of people caught on, including myself, until what was happening with him in his house. But I still think he played the part really well. The kind of 90s heartthrob kind of guy. And now the main focus of my review, as far as storyline and acting goes, is going to be about the women of Beetlejuice. I was so thoroughly impressed. They were all amazing, stunning, gorgeous. I cannot speak their praises high enough, and that's basically what most of this review is going to be about. So if you don't want to hear me talk about all of these amazing women, I guess you can go. But I'd like it if you stayed. Jenna Ortega, introduced as Astrid, was such a perfect choice to add to the Dietz women. She was morose enough to be believable as a Dietz, and really sharp and witty. Monica Bellucci as Dolores. I loved her. Her introduction was so cool and kind of gross and interesting, and I really thought that when all of that was happening and it all built up, that we were going to get so much more from her. And I'm going to say that I was a little disappointed that we didn't. This great introduction, and it was just built up so well. And then she kind of just popped in and out of the movie chasing down Beetlejuice. And I found that a little bit frustrating because her backstory is really cool and her look is really interesting and she fits right into the Tim Burton universe. So I feel like she was really underutilized in the story, but I was still happy to see her in it. And of course, we all know and love Winona Ryder as Lydia Dietz. I thought the way that she played Lydia in this was very interesting. I know I've seen a few people talk about how timid she was and how easily manipulated she was by Rory, but I have a lot to say about that, actually. Lydia went through some really difficult things. She went through this whole thing with her father and her mother. I guess her mom dipped out when she was young, and that's when Delia came into the picture. She dealt with moving to another state with her family into a haunted house where a crazed demon named Beetlejuice kind of hounded her and hunted her down and tried to force her into marriage. And then after that, she falls in love to Richard, who I thought was a really sweet character. And he dies and leaves her alone with a child. The effects of all of those difficult things really make it plausible to me that she would be such a timid, kind of worrisome person in the future. Even decades later, trauma can deeply affect the way that you interact with the world around you. And I think it's important to comment on that. And even though she experienced all of that and she was feeling the way that she was feeling and she was being manipulated by Rory, who was terrible to her, I think her inner strength really came through. She really wanted to be there for her daughter, and she did it. She came through. She really showed up for Astrid, and I think that just goes to show the strength of her inner character. And now the character that I tried to channel my best version of for my review is Delia Dietz, played by Catherine O'Hara. Catherine O'Hara is a legend, not just in the Tim Burton fan base, but she's just amazing and incredible in everything she does. And I am a big fan. To see her bring back this character that I personally love so much was really, really cool. When I first watched Beetlejuice when I was a kid, I felt like Delia was kind of treated like a joke. She was the wife of the wealthy real estate guy, I guess, and she was an artist, and it felt like nobody ever took her seriously. All she wanted to do was decorate her house the way that she wanted to and make her art and have people respect that. And I never thought it was outrageous or crazy what she wanted, even though it was presented that way to us in the original Beetlejuice. And in Beetlejuice 2, I really felt like she got a bit of a redemption, and I was really glad to see it. She's a world-renowned artist who is doing collaborations with a lot of amazing people, and her art is all over, and she's massively successful enough to donate a whole wing to an art school that Astrid is going to. So I really loved that jump from like, oh gosh, this silly woman who likes to decorate and wear funny clothes and make art sculptures that nobody understands is now this massive success. And it was just really cool to see her go from being misunderstood to truly understood and seen for who she was. And that takes me into the next section of my review, is some of the theming in the storyline. I thought the mother-daughter relationships of Beetlejuice 2 were really interesting, and they spoke to me in a lot of ways, and they're really worth talking about. What I mostly liked about that mother-daughter relationship theming was that it didn't shy away from how difficult those relationships can be, which I understand firsthand. It also didn't take away from the love that's mixed in there with the frustration or irritation or impatience or whatever it is that they might be feeling toward each other. And that's pretty spot on for real life for me, even though I know that this is a fictional story. It was a good little representation of how important and stressful mother-daughter relationships can be. I also wanted to talk about something a little more serious, and I know I'm probably going to get some eye rolls, but I think it's important. There's a lot of abuse in this movie. I mean, the way that Jeremy really manipulates Astrid into getting what he wants from her to the point where she's losing her life. The way that Rory treats Lydia and manipulates her into doing whatever he wants her to do, even controlling the medicine that she takes and financially abusing her by just taking advantage of her and making her work when she doesn't want to. And I think it's important to discuss because of the type of women that are in this movie, in this story, in this little world that Tim Burton built. Women are sensitive, they're artistic, they're smart, they're emotional, and they've been through a lot. You've been through a lot, and you're sensitive and you're artistic, and you don't always have healthy coping mechanisms or whatever. I think you're a lot more easily abused or manipulated in that way. But I think it's really important to note is that by comparison, you have these amazing, incredible women in this film, and you have them being manipulated and abused by these men. But the whole time you see them through a lens of admiration and love and longing. And I think that's a really interesting tidbit. I was a little worried about how they would be presented. It's been 36 years, women age, and we all know how Hollywood treats aging women. It's not a secret. Aging women in general in society, but especially in Hollywood, are treated badly. They're not given the roles that they deserve, and frankly, it's bullshit. So I was worried about how they would be treated. But I will say I was really pleasantly surprised. They the camera never shied away from them. They wore makeup. It looked like makeup on a woman who is not 19 years old anymore. And they were just framed in this lens of like, you're beautiful, you're amazing, we love you, by Tim Burton. And I thought that was so cool and refreshing. I really love that Tim Burton didn't try to take a younger actress like Jenna Ortega and try to push her to the forefront of the story and push all of the older actresses aside so that he could have some kind of blockbuster hit. I think he really wanted to put them all up on this like pedestal for all of us to see in their like amazing skill and beauty, and that's such a refreshing thing to see. If you follow any of my social media, you know exactly how I feel about the women of Beetlejuice. I cannot talk enough about how much I loved how they were presented and how we all still loved them for who they are as these characters and who they are as actors. And I just... Also, special shout out to Danny Elfman. I really thought he used the original score and refreshed it enough that it felt really fun and interesting, and it worked really well with this like modern version of Tim Burton's Beetlejuice, and I really think he did a great job with it. Speaking of the music, I thought the score was excellent. The Deia revival was so good and kind of haunting, and I loved it, but I do think it was wasted on Charles Dietz. The wedding cake scene was probably my favorite out of the whole movie, and I'm probably going to get some complaints about that. I know a lot of people complained about it. They thought it was too long. They thought it was too campy or silly or funny. And maybe they just didn't get it. I know that it doesn't compare to the original Deo scene in the original Beetlejuice, but I loved it. It's camp, and if it's funny and it's interesting and it has a great song, I'm gonna be down, and I really liked it. I have zero shame about it. I also think that MacArthur Park was such an interesting and honestly perfect choice for the scene. The song is really fitting somehow for what's happening in the story, and I just really thought it was good. Now, I already touched on a couple of these before, but I figured I would go ahead and get into a couple of my complaints. I kind of hate that Monica Bellucci's character, Dolores, was built up. We got this cool backstory with this like really cool vintage film style flashback with Beetlejuice. I thought she was such a cool addition to the Tim Burton franchise. I really loved the way she presented. I thought all of it was amazing. And then she just kind of popped in and out yelling Beetlejuice every so often, and then kind of just gets disappeared by the sandworm at the end. And I just thought she was so underutilized because Monica Bellucci is a great actor and it was a cool character, and it's kind of disappointing that we didn't get more of her. One of the complaints that I've seen a lot, one of the criticisms that I've heard a lot, is the Soul Train sequences. Tim Burton is not known for being a racially diverse casting director. His movies are very much one style, one type of person, and he hasn't really veered away from that a lot. I've heard a few people say that they think the Soul Train sequences were kind of a dig at the people who criticize him for that, and honestly, I kind of think it is. Now, racial topics are not necessarily something that I'm going to be an expert on, but I do try to listen to the people on social media who put themselves forward, who try to talk about these things, and I really do think it's a fair criticism to weigh against Tim Burton for his past films and for this. And like I said before, I do think it's important to think critically about the media we consume, so it's worth discussing with your friends. It's worth thinking about. It's worth researching. I do really like the focus on practical effects. I know that some CGI was used, but the practical effects really add so much to the movie. I thought it was really well done. The CGI wasn't too distracting. Overall, I thought it was funny. It was camp. It didn't take itself too seriously. It was kind of silly. It didn't feel too pandery. It was nostalgic enough to be cozy, but fresh enough to be interesting. Overall, I would score it pretty well. I was entertained, and that's basically what I go to the movies for, so how can I really complain that much? Another thing I wanted to mention was the kind of Beetlejuice renaissance that happened. It almost felt like how excited everybody was about Barbie. I remember I was part of that little bandwagon too, and there's no shame in that. I really did feel like all of the weird kids, all of the former weird kids, all of the strange and unusual type people, we all really were looking for a movie that spoke to us in that way from Tim Burton again. I can't say I've been a huge fan of some of his newer remakes, but I think he did a good job with this, and everybody kind of collectively came together with their black and white stripes and their Lydia Dietz bangs or their Delia Dietz red lip, and everybody came together and had a really good time talking about the movie, sharing pictures, showing off the makeup, and I just thought it was a really cool little Beetlejuice renaissance, and I was really happy to be a part of it. Now, that's all for me today. I really hope you enjoyed watching this. I enjoyed making it. I love talking about movies, and if you really like what I do, please subscribe, follow. I'm on Instagram, I'm on TikTok, and I'm on YouTube here, so please follow, say hello. I'd love to talk about it. Did you like Beetlejuice 2? Did you have fun watching it? Did you talk about it with your friends? Are you avoiding it altogether because you're afraid you're going to be disappointed? Do you just not care? I really want to know. I'd love to discuss it. Thanks, bye.